Welcome back to the Start and Scale podcast. I'm your host, Jack Brandwood. This is the place where we speak with people who are starting and scaling tech businesses. This week, I sit down with Chris Roberts, founder over at Nimble Approach, a software consultancy and digital partner working with organizations such as Sky, Asda, and the NHS. In this episode, we discuss the reality of having to wear all the hats at the beginning of a company's journey, how your network is really your net worth, and what the most common issue is that businesses are trying to fix. Hope you enjoy the episode, and do not forget to subscribe. Chris, thanks for coming on. Thanks for hosting us in your gorgeous offices as well.
Yeah, anytime. Nice to be here. Nice to show you the place.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's obviously this is Sheffield one, but you've got 4 Sheffield, Leeds, Bristol, Manchester.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, we sort of started Sheffield and the other 2 northern cities, and then bolstered with Bristol. Back into 2022 now.
When you're picking offices to set up, is there any particular criteria that it needs to hit?
I look at a couple of things. I guess world's changed, as we know, post-pandemic. We used to co-locate a lot with clients. We still do that in places, but now we look at both talent pool and client base. We're evaluating at the time, I think Bristol and Edinburgh, I think it was. So we looked at talent pool having probably really saturated around the Sheffield, Leeds, Manchester region, which is all within about an hour of each other. And and the clients we were winning work with at the time, and it was just a logical fit. Bristol was great because we sort of got, Cheltenham, Gloucester, Bath above it, and then you've got like Newport, Cardiff below as well, and some sort of client base there.
Makes sense. You kind of wish there'd be a good talent pool in like Madrid or like Barcelona or the Bahamas maybe. That'd be quite nice. I always like to start these interviews off with a little bit of a philosophical question. Who is Chris Roberts?
Dad, an indie music fan, as a euphemism, a real ale enthusiast. Yeah, I think I'm driven a lot by interests. I think even with my work and what I did in my contracting career, perm before that, and then the business, I think I've got to enjoy what I'm doing. I think we're only here once, I think, with the work element of it, and then setting up the business. I'm fortunate enough to enjoy what I do, and so it'd be a criminal to not sort of grab that by both hands, and that's sort of my philosophy with life anyway, and then also what we're doing here with Nimble.
Amazing. So indie band, love it. Favourite indie band?
The Verve, so probably quite old school from just sort of your late 20s listeners. A lot of the Britpop era, that's what I sort of grew up with, really, like your Oasis, Verve, Radiohead sort of.
Fair enough. And favourite real ale?
Jaipur by Thornbridge, I would say.
Yeah. Is that the one with the elephant on the front?
Yeah, I don't know. No, maybe not.
Oh, okay. I'll give it a go. Anyway. I'll give it a go, definitely.
Pike's a punch.
Yeah. Well, look, I kind of warned you just like 2 seconds before we started the podcast. I was going to ask you this, but Tact, one of our vision is to create a world where everyone gets their dream job.
Yeah.
And you weren't always the founder of Nimble Approach, so I'm going to ask you if you can draw for me what you wanted to be when you grew up.
I think, luckily for the horrific drawer I am, I actually sketch a lot in my work, but like it's nothing lifelike. I can.
That's fair.
I'm going to draw something that at least doesn't mean I have to draw the people you sort of get.
Nice. Oh yeah. Okay. I think I've got what it is. Perfect. That's yeah.
A footballer, so nice. Try and dream big, and I think you have to dream big when you're a Sheffield United fan. Let's sidestep any mention of football if anyone knows what last night's game result was.
Oh God, no, I don't. Don't worry, we don't have to mention it. It's fine. How that dream? Where did it go? Is there still a chance?
I played no. I was 40 last month, so maybe not. I think
right.
Yeah. No, so I got into the football and both music. The music, actually, we had the band I was in my maybe mid-20s. We did get an indie label deal and did indie chart, but never sort of graced the top 40. And then that sort of coincided with me getting into tech about 2008, 9.
Wow. Oh, so you're in a band. Right, okay. That'd be a lot of layers to Chris. So Nimble, a recent partnership with SEC, big business. What was that like?
I think for some time I'd grown Nimble from just me in October 2016, and we'd gone through lots of chapters and iterations, and we were looking for a partner. For some time, we'd had a lot of interest from 25 plus private equity firms over the last 2.5 years, and I think we'd met people, understood the market and what a partner could look like. The SEC came out of the blue, and a chance to meet with the Rigby family. Didn't know loads about them initially. Did a lot of my research, absolute British entrepreneurial institution, been around nearly 50 years. The size of the company, I was very pleasantly surprised that there was a lot of like cultural alignment with our values, honesty, transparency, wanting to sort of share knowledge, continue growth, reward people. And it came at the right time because I think we know the economy's been challenging for the last 18 months. We were just chatting off camera, I think we've still been selling, but we've certainly felt it's been more of a hustle. And it's a challenging time. However, they've got 400 blue chip client base across the globe. They do a number of services. They get close to our offering now, but they don't offer like user-centered design and the full stack engineering that we've started to get a really good name for in this market. Yet they've got a lot of the introductions. They want to go into the more digital transformation space themselves. So it's a natural fit where we can double our client base and work on some really interesting client brands, logos, and interesting projects for our Nimblers. But it's also a springboard for them into the digital transformation space and that innovation arm of the SEC family. We get to remain independent and stay nimble, but with the backing now of a bigger group and in the SEC family.
Where did the name Nimble Approach come from, by the way?
I was into a lot of agile transformation from my contracting days, and Nimble is essentially like a synonym of agile. So it was just I came up with that and sketched a logo, and it sort of went from there really.
People watching this can't see, but the Nimble logo is etched into this gorgeous table that you had in your office. It's a really cool logo, so bravo. So that's kind of a good segue into kind of talking through how you got to where you are now. Yeah, so if you could walk us through, your early career to where you are now.
Yeah, so early career of doing initially like traditional project management. This was like 2008-9, and this is when the sort of agile movement wasn't in the majority in the UK. There was a lot of like Prince 2 waterfall, more traditional methods of delivering projects. The company I was at the time was lucky to get the opportunity to really sort of stretch my legs in the lean agile space, and took on like roles that then were the early days of like Scrum Master roles. Then got into agile coaching and transferring knowledge to others. Then I sort of hit a wall and learned everything I could from people at that company, and instead of plateauing, I went freelancing. So the contract market, did some really interesting roles there, and then started to meet a series of like-minded people and created a network and a bit of an umbrella. And that was the early days of Nimble, really. At the time, I was sort of speaking at different events and conferences as well. So I set up a site just to cross-reference that and get the brand out there. And yeah, the early days of Nimble was a lot of agile coaching and transformation. We got some good early breaks and proved ourselves in early engagements like rentalcars.com, who then got acquired by Booking. The MOJ in Sheffield wanted to set up a digital hub, and I'd just done that for the Home Office prior to setting up Nimble. That was the first base they'd had outside of London. We made a success of that, so we were also able to contribute in the consulting space to help him make the MOJ studio in Sheffield a success. So yeah, we we kicked on from there.
So, and those businesses you got in with early doors, they're quite big, big names. How did you get in with them? What was the inroad?
I think like the first probably story of the first at least 5 years of Nimble, a lot of it was through networking, through some really great people I'd been lucky enough to spend the previous 6, 7, 8 years of my career in. I got a network of people who had gone on to do different roles, client side, always maintained a good relationship and understood what challenges and headaches people had, and that's still really how we essentially get hired today. Someone has a problem removing, we're a services business, right? So we're not, as much as I'd love to say, we're not selling a shiny, sexy product in a box, but we're so really individuals got a high demanding, challenging role where we're solving a problem or removing a headache.
What's the most common headache that customers come to you with?
Let's say there's a delivery roadmap for said enterprise organization. Everyone I've ever seen delivery roadmap that is stretch goal at best and challenging, borderline Nirvana, borderline unachievable. So I think you get an element of the way through that year or period the roadmap's for, and there's a project that has not started yet, or one that's going slow or running to difficulty, or we've not got the capacity in house to deliver it. But do we want to really go out to market externally to hire, or will we get people quick enough? And that's a headache we've removed by our primary service over the years, which is the pop-up squad. So that's essentially being able to ramp up a lean agile team that can deliver value quickly and take an idea to a live thing delivered, whether that's a product or a service.
Okay, pop-up squad, is that a fairly pretty unique offering?
It's been imitated by a lot of people since I set it up in like 2017, 18. So there'll be very similar name things probably out there in the market. But yeah, I think we just focus on ourselves, and we've got a real rhythm and a way of making that successful for clients, and I think that's sort of testament to some long-standing engagements we have with clients.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Agile there. Obviously, the name Nimble Approach is based off the Agile principles. Is Agile just a buzzword, and what does Agile look like to you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a mindset and a way of working, really. So essentially a set of methodologies for delivering value at pace. So it's mindset of being able to break something down and deliver the highest value things quickly and get feedback. So rather than a project like it used to sort of taking two years as a supplier doing that in isolation, it's what can you release in 3 or 4 months, get it in front of the people who are going to use it, check you've got it right before you do any more. And that's essentially it.
You must go into quite a few organizations who say, Chris, don't worry, we're Agile, right? We're Agile. You go in there and you go, this isn't Agile. Those businesses who think they're Agile but perhaps aren't Agile, what do they look like? What are they doing, and what should they be doing?
There's different stages, right? I think there's being on a journey and genuinely wanting to be, and then there's also maybe we can't be arsed, so it's a tick box exercise. I think we try and steer clear of the latter, because we can't add value there if people are just wanting to put on a window shop, view of the world. That's not what we're about. Our people want to help organizations genuinely improve, to leave an organization better than they found it, and that's something that we can work with them with. We have to sort of break that down, look at where are they on a maturity assessment, and work with them. Agile is very much about collaboration. It's very much about empowering teams. It's actually about removing hierarchies, and that ends up with organizations that are empowered and a lot happier, a lot more motivated, and guess what? They achieve a lot more.
Yeah, that makes sense. And talking about that as well, you set up a very, very successful business. You go into a lot of businesses, big and small. I guess what's the biggest mistake you see companies making nowadays? Is there any pattern?
Yeah, good question. I don't think there's a particular pattern. I think that we see a lot of different problems in organizations. I think we always try and stay lean enough and evolve our structure and our ways of working almost just in time. That's a bit of an agile approach. I guess you can see organizations grow too fast without the structure, and the structure is just one thing, but you've also got to think about when you do grow, how do people communicate now? What are the different forums that people have to give feedback, to have a healthy debate about something? Do we have different working groups to improve things around the business? What are we going to try and improve this quarter? I think I've seen a lot of product companies implementing OKRs. I don't know if you've come across OKRs. Essentially, what are the things we're going to do this quarter or maybe every 6 months to try and move the dial? So not BAU in a business, but actually what are the things we're going to try and really improve on, for the good of the company and its people. I see companies, particularly product companies, when they're implementing OKRs, taking too many on at a time. We've actually tried OKRs ourselves, and we found like limiting our work in progress, our WIP, to sort of 3 a quarter. Had a number of things that we could meaningfully change, but not too many that we couldn't really move the dial enough with each of them.
That makes sense. So obviously talking about, businesses and some of the mistakes they make and some of the mistakes you come in to fix. If you could start Nimble all over again, are there any particular things you would do differently?
Yeah, another good question. I think I got this eventually, but I think ensure that I give responsibility away and, recruit a senior leadership team earlier than I probably did. I got around that by sort of nearly killing myself, but I think not really recommend that to anyone. I think, the realization that I'd got too many plates to spin, was wearing too many hats, I guess, at the early days, made it very challenging for me, but I came to that eventually. But I think, being clear on hiring the right senior leadership team and giving away that responsibility earlier on would be something I'd look at. So I think always trying to think ahead of where you are now in terms of what's the next iteration of our org structure.
Yeah, that seems to be a common piece of advice as well that we get, actually. It's like, understand, what's in your tool belt. Yeah. Focus on that, the good bits. Yeah. And then give up hire people in to help you out with the rest of it. What's your particular strength? What do you focus on?
To my surprise, and I never thought of myself like this when I started the company, but being able to sell what we do. And I think I always had a bit of a stigma with sales, that it was all the sort of snake charmer, pinstripe suit. But actually, it's just about building relationships. And I think building relationships and then being able to myself sort of scope some of the problems and understand it. We come at things very agnostic, like we don't come in with a particular technology or a solution in mind. It's that classic thing of we don't want to give the prescription without a diagnosis, if you like, to use the sort of medical analogy. And that's what we've used to solve challenging problems before we even start to look at product or tech. We sort of say, okay, what's your business problem or your challenge, and then understand that a bit more and peel the onion before we then try and solutionize.
When you were going to market, but when you partnered with SCC, before that you mentioned there was a few other conversations you had. Were you going out looking for partnership, or was it just happen naturally?
We got approached a lot. I think Mike, who was our sort of non-exec, he'd come to us after the success of Infinity Works, so that probably got a lot of attention as well, and sort of PE companies putting two and two together that we may look at investment as well. So we got approached a lot. It was a space for me to get my head into. It was quite sort of fresh to that area, so understanding the entirety of the space and the art of the possible, and then trying to think where could we take it, but having set it up and be really obsessed about our culture being healthy and evolving in the right way. It was a very sort of precious thing to me, so it had to be the right decision when the time came.
Yeah, I was going to say, because this is literally your baby. Like, you sole founder, built it from like literally you to how many people are you now?
About 150, 180 if we include some of our sort of contract team.
Bloody hell! Right, yeah. So the thought of giving that up, perhaps, or some sort of state, must have been quite an emotional time.
Yeah, I think I tried to sort of, like I've done with everything over the last 7 years, I think try and take it in my stride, and you sort of seem to, maybe it's from the project management early days, have some like inbuilt risk in me that I think it factors into my decision making, maybe even subconsciously. I think I had in my head that if I did take any form of investment or do any sort of partnership, the litmus test was being able to look, our people in the eye, and tell them what we're doing and why it's a good idea, and pave out a bit of a vision for the future, because that's really important. Mentioned in the early days, probably hired the first 20 plus staff myself, so it's really important, and a good number of those are still with us now. So that was the key thing to me.
Yeah, I bet they're kind of in disbelief, right? Like they started with this business and like, oh my god, what?
Yeah, no, they were, and I think as we've grown, and then you get to a stage, and we'll always, there's some that a lot of them are incredibly loyal to us, and then you will lose one or two, and people who prefer to work at a 10-20 person company, and of course that's, everyone's different, right? And I think we embrace that and accept that, and where that is the case, wish everyone well.
yeah, and because I know a big thing for you is that, you mentioned that culture piece a few times, is creating an amazing place to work, right? Big thing. Where does that come from for you? Why is that such an important thing?
I think because I think the company I was at, where I was last perm, where I did a lot of my project management, the introduction to Agile, that had a really great culture, and I think it showed me that actually, if you like the space you're in, if you found the right organisation, you can really enjoy what you spend, the majority of your Monday to Friday doing, being at work. So the opportunity is there, and I wanted to recreate that, because that was a really enjoyable place to work, but also put our own stamp on it. So it sort of showed me we can have this really great place to work. It is possible, and if something's possible, then it's almost a travesty if you don't try and at least sort of seek or create that. So that was the mindset I had.
And how do you do it? How do you create an amazing place to work?
I think empowering people. I think I had a lot of belief of the journey. I think that I could take Nimble on, and that journey would then involve continual growth. And if you've got continual growth, then, and you've got good people, then you can give them a rewarding career. That for some people may be just recognising and rewarding when they've done a good job. For others, it may be being able to progress through a career framework and have a great career here, and really move through the gears and do the next thing they want to achieve in the career at this company. And that's what we've sort of set out to achieve.
So, this is a question I always like to kind of finish on, really, is if there's someone else out there, another Chris who's wanting to set up business and has an idea and thinks, wow, this could really be something that people use, what would be your piece of advice for them?
3 things that I've always sort of stuck to, have been reflected on this recently. I think the first one, if you've got the vision for something, that means you can achieve it. If you can imagine a thing, it is possible. I think then you need the discipline. I think for me, this isn't a thing that's doesn't sound sexy enough that people shout about it on LinkedIn, or it's not clickbait or viral enough. But discipline is massive for an entrepreneur, certainly massive for a founder. So for me, that was, I'm a morning person. I'd be in this office like 7 a.m. every morning because I'd get half a day's work done before people got here. So discipline's a massive thing. Similar to discipline for those who work out, I guess, similar analogy to that. You get a bit of a routine and you sort of stick to it. And the third one's just tenacity. You come across, and you'll know already, you come across so many hurdles, but I think it's easy to sort of do well, when the sun's shining, but it's how you behave and how you react and how you keep your composure when you're challenged and you come across a hurdle and you think, we're either going to try and run for a brick wall or we're going to pivot. And I think that tenacity that sort of keeps you going, keep your mentality and reflect and react to that is really, really important.
They're a good piece of advice. I think the discipline bit as well, especially, is it's not, like you say, it's not sexy, is it? It's doing the really boring things for a long period of time, and eventually you'll get some sort of like compound interest on it.
You do, and I don't hear it talked about that much, but for me, that's been a really, really key thing and something I'd always take into whatever I do.
Yeah, and also the last kind of piece of advice you had there was about tenacity and resilience, I guess. And when something bad happens, how are you going to power through it? And like it's great when the sun's shining, but how do you actually behave when it's a bit stressful?
Yeah.
Have you had any point? You must have had, but any points that particularly stand out in your journey so far like that?
Yeah, I think in the early days, we'd done really, really well with quite a blue chip client, but then out of the blue, it didn't sort of stack up. But somebody was sort of threatening to sue us, and it was before we had loads of money in the bank, and it was a very stressful time. But it was just take a step back, deep breath, hold your nerve, look at it logically. You have to try and clear your head at something like that happens. I think that was the day before like our second Christmas do, where we already had about like 15 people or something, but like there was real like commercial risk there. But that, oh dear, that's a good example of it. No, it's all good. It's all stories that sort of make it now, the twists and turns, right? So I think it's all good. But I think just deep breath. Yeah, remember the mindfulness or the meditation.
There you go. Yeah, but you seem like quite a chilled guy. Like you seem pretty calm and.
I tried to be. I work at sort of. My mind works at like 100 miles an hour, so I have to have different sort of like techniques. I have to like keep myself like balanced and focused, and not to context switch. Yeah. So yeah.
You talked earlier about how that first year or so, when you were doing everything, you were kind of like, it always killed you, right? And you must have felt awful.
Sole founder, yeah. So yeah, not a lot of people do, 2, 3, 4 people, but yeah.
How did you then step away from that? I know you started to hire people. How did you know you needed to? And what do you do now to avoid that kind of similar burnout? Because it must be quite easy.
I guess then, from the Agile world, is like a ceremony that people do call retrospectives, where you reflect back on over a time period of what's gone well and what could be better and what could improve. It's normally a thing in the Agile world people do in teams, but there's also a thing called personal retrospectives, and it's just applying the same philosophy, but looking back at what you've been doing, what you've been focusing on the last 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks. And I was just sort of identified, by doing that sort of mechanism, I was doing way too much. And I was like reflecting back on what I had been doing and where I'd been putting my areas of focus, and I'm like, add all those together, somebody else could do that. They could probably do a lot better job of it than me, because they're not context switching. They focus on that one thing. I'm trying to juggle 7. Like, the best humans in the world, context switching is still not natural. So like, yeah, so that was a thing that helped identify that then. I guess now I've got a really good group of people around me. We've got a great senior leadership team here, who are empowered and got responsibility, but take accountability as well. So that's really great, and it allows me to sort of focus on the growth and the next phase of the business, whereas they're doing a really effective job the day-to-day servicing our clients and keeping our people.
Amazing. And I promise I'll finish now. What that next phase of the business, are you allowed to tell us what that involves?
Yeah, so I think, we're looking at that continued growth, and we feel we're really set up for that now. Obviously, doing that whilst being mindful of how we navigate, as I mentioned, a tough economy. But, I think we're going to be looking at other hubs in the UK, cities like Newcastle and Edinburgh, ones we've got our eye on at the moment, but also looking at opportunity outside of the UK via the SEC base, whether that's into Europe or even further beyond.
Well, look, thank you so much. And it's been great speaking to you. And thanks for housing us. This is our first podcast on the road. But yeah, it's been amazing. And I've been looking forward to speaking to you for a while. And everyone who's on LinkedIn and socials knows how great Nimble is and how much you've grown. And I'm sure we're all excited to see what the next phase looks like.
Yeah, cheers, Jack. Appreciate that.
And that's it for this week's episode. Thanks so much for listening, and I really hope you enjoyed it. Anything we talked about will be linked in the show notes, and if you haven't already, don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts, and we'll catch you on the next one.